So this is sort of an example of why German blue rams are called rams. When they spar, they literally ram their heads together. It's pretty awesome to watch because their black coloration gets insanely powerful while they're doing this, as you can see here. Rams are, and I think always will be, my favorite fish just because of this behavior and the coloration they display when they're really being active. It's just really amazing to watch. I'd really like to one day get some footage of this happening in the wild because I think it's just so cool to watch. So I think I purchased these two as a pair. The one on the left is definitely a male, I'm positive. The one on the right I'm very conflicted about at this point because I've never seen a female be so aggressive with the male. So this suggests to me that it was a male that looked kind of more like a female at the time when I purchased them. It's still the one on the left now. I don't know. Once you've kept rams long enough, you sort of get an idea what indicates gender. There are guidelines like the black spot in the center of their back, which they both have. If it's a female, they'll generally have a bit of blue sheen that shines through that spot if they're a female. Although I have seen that be different. Like obviously if you have an electric blue ram, which I'll link a video to electric blue rams which I kept in the past, that's a trait you can't identify once they've been selectively bred because the entire fish becomes that blue sheen color. So I'm sort of skeptical on that as an accurate method of sexing rams. But what I usually go on is the pink belly. You can see at this point the more dominant male is sort of winning the battle here. He's chasing the other one around and he or she is retreating. But the most reliable way I've ever found to sex rams is by the pink belly. It seems like with every color variant you have, a pink belly is a good indication that a ram is female. But this supposed female, which you see here, does not show basically any pink on his or her belly. So I honestly have no idea if it's a male or female. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to purchase a few more rams and let them pair up out of a group because I really think that will limit the aggression that you're seeing here. And I also think when they're allowed to choose their mate, the breeding tends to be a little more successful, and it's just more enjoyable to watch rams bond because you see this intense coloration whether they're fighting or sort of, I guess, love making, or when they spawn is when you see their greatest coloration ever, really. And the females become extremely intense during that time. I'll link another video to my first pair of rams that I successfully raised fry from. I took a video of them spawning, and in that you'll be able to see the crazy good coloration that they get at the time when they're spawning. So you should definitely check that out. They definitely rival the colors these rams are showing off right now, and I would say they probably best them at that. So yeah, I just thought the rams are doing something interesting, so I figured I'd let you in on it. And yeah, these are German blue rams, my favorite fish ever, hopefully forever. I love them, and I I spent a couple months after I moved to Washington without them, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I had to get some, so I did. So, yeah. I love German blue rams. Hopefully you do too. I highly recommend you try keeping them. Just a few tips before I go if you are looking to keep them. A lot of people say that you need extremely warm water to keep rams. They'll say if you really want them to do good, you want them somewhere from 82 to 86. I have not found that to be the case. Now in this tank right now, see I have a thermometer here, I'm going to seem like a liar because the temperature in this tank is 82 or 83 degrees. Now, it is true, I am running them at that hotter recommended temperature right now. But the only reason I'm doing that is because I know the tank I purchased them from, that's the temperature they were running at. And with fish, the key is always stability, at least from what I've learned. So whether you're keeping a fish at, say, a temperature of 86 or 70, it's always better to keep that consistent temperature than try to adjust it frequently to shoot for some number recommended on the internet. So I've kept rams as low as 78, and I've actually had them breed at that low a temperature too. So I wouldn't say it's I wouldn't say that you should be discouraged from keeping rams if that's your tank's temperature. I wouldn't go below 78. I think it's possible they can definitely survive below it. I don't know though if they can thrive below it. I've never attempted that because why test limits? I'd like them to thrive as much as possible. But I think that's one care recommendation with rams that gets taken a little too far, and a lot of people, including myself, hesitate a lot. I liked rams for about 3 years before I ever kept them because I was so scared that I would kill them. And once I got them, I realized, wow, they spawned within 3 weeks, and they were just doing great. So I think, for one thing, if you really love rams, just go ahead and get them. If you kill a few, it's really not a big deal. If you really love them and you're really dedicated to them, you'll end up making more than you kill, because I've probably killed 15 rams in my life, and some of those died from old age. I probably only killed 10 from a fault of my own. But I've also bred, and this is going to sound like a broken record, but I'll link another video to some rams that I raised from a spawn I had. But I've raised at least 25 rams. So if you feel guilty about killing a fish, obviously don't be careless, don't abuse a fish. That's horrible, and if you're doing that, I don't respect you. But as long as your intentions are good and you learn something from every fish you deal with, don't be scared. This is way too great a fish to avoid keeping out of fear, and just go for it. If you have trouble, talk to me. I'll do everything I can to save everyone's rams, because I love them and I love this hobby, and I want more people to fall in love with it like I have. So let's see. So I've covered, I think rams can be kept down to 78. As far as getting them to that temperature, I think I'm never going to lower these rams below 80, simply because I don't need to. I'm not planning on keeping any cooler water fish with them, so I'll probably keep it at least 80. If you were going to try to get them down to 78, I would recommend you do it extremely gradually to maintain that sort of stable water parameter guideline, which I mentioned earlier. So what I would recommend is ideally get them in the summer. Purchase some, depending on the climate you live in, purchase them when the outdoor temperature averages at least 65 degrees, I would say. Because one other danger is you want their temperature to be stable in the tank, but you also want to be careful when you're shipping them. Now, if you're shipping them in the mail, I kind of think no matter what season you ship them in, you're going to run a pretty big risk of temperature dropping. But I would highly recommend you get rams from a local breeder. They'll most likely be closer to your water parameters, and you'll be able to consult a breeder if you have any issues. And with transport, you want to make sure that you keep them in some sort of well-insulated container to try to prevent as much stress and temperature change as possible. So I'd recommend something like a styrofoam-lined box, or maybe a bag filled with packing peanuts. Any number of different things that you think would be good at insulating the fish against cold temperatures and preventing heat loss during transport. So once you've got that box checked off, as far as acclimating them to your new tank, or the tank you have, a lot of people say rams should only be introduced to a tank that is well cycled and well established. Personally, I have never really broken that rule. I've never had rams as the first fish I introduced to a tank. But to give you an idea of how tough they are, these rams are showing off essentially perfect color. They've been in this tank a little over a week. And this tank has only been, it's only had fish in it for probably a month. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, I already introduced rams. And as you can see, I have a lot of fish in here. There are 6 Spherbicorridoras, which were one of the fish that were introduced to this tank first. Along with those, these cardinal tetras were also introduced to the tank first. I'm actually not sure how many there are. I think there are 13 cardinals in here, but I haven't been able to count. They move too fast. There's one zebra danio you see there that I want to remove, but it's so fast. Removing it almost isn't worth the trouble because I'll stress out the other fish so much. There are also 6 Corridoras habrosus, one of my favorite corridors. It's great because it's small so that you can fit a group in a tiny tank. I'll link a video I did on the first time I got those up above. I think it's one of my best videos. It shows them feeding on some baby brine shrimp. I just really love this fish. I've bred quite a few of them, and it takes no effort. I actually bred them by accident. Basically all I did was load a 15-gallon tank, same size as this one, with Java moss, and feed them a ton. And they laid eggs that I didn't know about in the Java moss, and one day I saw little tiny babies. So they're great. They're really easy to take care of and breed. I think I produced probably 30 out of the group of, I think, 5 or 6 that were in the original video that I'll link above. So yeah, so there's 6 habrosus corys, 6 sterbicorys, about 13 cardinals, a zebra danio, 4 clown loaches, which I assure you are temporary. They'll grow probably to 2/3 the length of this tank when they're big monsters. That'll take a few years, but they're not planned to be a permanent inhabitant of this tank. They just like hot water. So I figured I'd put all the hot water fish in one tank for now, since they can all coexist pretty peacefully. So all of those fish went in either at the same time or prior to the rams. The Abrosis corridoras went in at the same time as the rams. Everything else was in prior. And they're doing completely fine. I highly recommend you run a sponge filter with rams. It's definitely not necessary. I've run them with power filters in the past, and they've done fine. But ever since I've started using sponge filters, I've never purchased any other type of filter. I just think they're simply the best. If you have any intentions to breed fish, they're the one filter that will never pose any problems as far as hurting fry. So long as you get a quiet enough air pump, they're generally the quietest form of filtration, which is nice. They're easier to clean. You basically grab that sponge, drop it in, sort of wrap a fish bag around it and lift it out of the aquarium. I'll link, Corey from Aquarium Co-op did a great video a long time ago on how he does that, which I watched before I ever got a sponge filter, but basically shows you how easy it is to clean. And overall, they're just the most versatile aquarium filter out there, and they're the cheapest. This filter costs about $8 if you factor in the air pump, which is a USB nano air pump from Aquarium Co-op up here. The total cost is about, let's see, the air pump's $10 and I think the filter is $8, plus a little bit of airline, so we'll round up from 18 to 20 for that bit of airline. I think that's a little generous, but $20 for this filter, and it is more than adequate for this tank for sure. I couldn't give you an exact number on how much it could run, but I believe sponge filters are by far the most efficient. And they're just versatile because you can pick them up and move them to another tank. If you're trying to establish a new one, they're not going to suck up any fry, like I mentioned before. The only downfall is that they take up space in the aquarium, but in some ways that's also a benefit, because a lot of times when you have an aquarium, if you're running on a budget, you don't have a lot of money to spend on decorations to make the tank look full. And this isn't exactly beautiful, but it takes up room and makes it easier to sort of fill the space in the tank. Which that's also important for fish like rams because it provides some hiding spaces. Line of sight blocks allow them to coexist better and not bully each other so much. So yeah, let's see. So I think where I left off with rams was on acclimation. So once you have your rams home and you're getting ready to introduce them to the tank, which, as I've sort of established, I don't believe it needs to be that well cycled. You should have it up to about 80 degrees or higher, I think. And pH, I think, doesn't actually matter much at all. Now that this female is starting to perk up and act more like a female, I would say. Maybe they're just having a little squabble and they're actually a pair, but I don't know yet. So get the tank to about 80. Make sure the water is dechlorinated. I would recommend using Prime or Fritz Complete, which is the water conditioner Aquarium Co-op sells on their website, or honestly any number of other water conditioners. I think they pretty much all work the same. Check your water parameters with a test kit or test strips. Make sure you have no ammonia, no nitrate, and less than 40 parts per million of nitrate. I would highly recommend you use some aquatic plants, as they give you a buffer against issues with not doing frequent enough water changes. And they also, rams benefit from the plants because they provide hiding spaces for them, and just make them look better, honestly. This is a fake plant I have in here right now, but I'm planning to get some more plants today to put in this tank, which should make it look a lot better. And I'll show you some of those results in the future. So temperature to 80 degrees, pH I think doesn't matter. As long as you're between 6 and 7.8, I would not worry. What I would worry more about is trying to get your rams from a source where their pH is comparable to yours. And that's where it's very important to get from a local breeder. My experience with rams, I acquired them in Illinois. I lived in the Chicago suburbs up until about 3 months ago, and that's where I bred rams. And I got them from a breeder who was on Lake Michigan water. And I was also on Lake Michigan water, so we essentially had identical water parameters, so I didn't have to worry about it at all. Now, it might be a little hard for you to manage that. Not everyone's in that sort of perfect a scenario. But if you can find someone local who has fairly similar parameters, or at least ones that they can tell you about, so you can attempt to locate someone with similar ones, that'll be very beneficial. I don't necessarily know. I think rams could take the adjustment fairly well, even if it was a different parameter, but ideally you get something close to your own. So now with introducing the rams, a lot of people recommend drip acclimation, and that is one area where I tend to strongly disagree with the notion that fish should be drip acclimated, except in very particular scenarios. So one of the big reasons I disagree with drip acclimation is ammonia in water. When the pH drops, I believe, below 6.8, ammonia converts into a far less toxic form, which I believe is ammonium. I may be slightly incorrect on the pH level where that occurs, and the scientific terminology for the molecules I'm referring to, but at a certain acidic pH, a lower pH, ammonia detoxifies into ammonium. And a lot of times when you ship fish, the pH gradually drops over time and drops below that threshold, which essentially neutralizes ammonia and makes it non-toxic to the fish, which is sort of beneficial. Now, if you drip acclimate your fish and your pH is above that non-toxic level for ammonia, you can actually retoxify the ammonia and essentially poison your fish in the bag by trying to drip acclimate. Now, I've never personally done that and seen a fish die from it, but I 100% believe that it occurs, and I think it's very possible I did it before when I was a beginner and didn't realize that was what stressed my fish and led to their death. So I use the plop and drop method, which is a term that Aquarium Co-op uses. Corey at Aquarium Co-op calls it plop and drop. And ever since I've used that method, I have not had a single loss within a period of time where I would blame the acclimation method for the death of the fish. You see that ram there, he's sort of displaying like he wants to spawn, actually. So that's interesting. I hope he's not trying to get the clown loaches to spawn with him. That would be a little bit unproductive, but we'll see. Hopefully this other one's a female and he's trying to get with her. So with the plop and drop method, what you should do is, first, make sure the fish isn't in a breather bag, because if it's in a breather bag, you cannot float it in the water, and it will actually suffocate the fish. So assuming the fish is in a normal fish bag that you would get at most fish stores that they bag up for you by tying it and applying a rubber band, I would float the bag in the tank for probably about a half hour. I would turn the lights off during that time so the lights are shining right down on the new fish and stressing them out. And I would give them about a half hour to get to temperature while not allowing any of the water from the bag to enter the tank or vice versa, tank into bag. Now after that half hour is up, I would sort of confirm by feel that the bags have water about the same temperature as the tank. After confirming that, I'd simply pour the fish, hold the net over probably a sink or a bucket, any water receptacle that you're okay with getting wet. Pour them through the net and into it, and drop them from the net directly into the tank. They should be fine. If the pH difference is significant, I can't guarantee you that they'll tolerate it completely fine, but I have never run into any problems with it, and I would say it's highly unlikely that you would either. And honestly, if you want to keep rams, I would try it. Like I said before, if you do your best and end up killing a few fish, it's okay. You learn from every experience. So yeah, and then from there, I've never had any issues with rams as far as foods to feed them. They'll take flakes, pellets, frozen food. One thing I'd say is avoid overfeeding